We want to say thank you again to Stephen Kerr from the Irish Inquiry, who created a video on his own platform, going back to the very first presentation by the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign, a presentation we gave here locally back in September 2020, just after Aaron's sentencing and conviction. The presentation, I do believe, is over 60 slides in PowerPoint, and Stephen edited that presentation and put it up online. And obviously that generated some interest, comments after Stephen had posted it. And one post we've been following and breaking down is from Mr. Big Stones. Now, we've looked at a number of the facets and factors enclosed in this statement or message that was sent to the Irish Inquiry site, and we've looked at 1, 2 and 3. We've broken them down into little segments and sections. We're going to look today at part 4 of Mr. Big Stone's piece that he sent into the Irish Inquiry. So number 4, as you can see here, is Tony skips all the important bits of the case. Let his son run off to America and not face the allegations who Tony knew was being talked about and reported in the papers, but blathers on with nonsense. So again, a lot of statements there from Mr. Big Stones rather than any questions, but we'll cover them nonetheless. I suppose the first and most important thing is here, and it is in essence how the authorities, the DPP and Garda Síochána, just tried to put in a broad stroke to say, yes, we know Aaron Brady was there. And that was no more evident than the day Pat Marry was given evidence in court and being questioned about how Aaron Brady became a suspect or whatever. And he just stood up and said, well, I just know he was there. And that was the bottom line. And that's something we'll cover again later on, no doubt, as we move forward. So it's a very broad stroke where he says Tony skips all the important bits of the case. So we need to break this down and show you, the public, what way Aaron's case was run and how the evidence was presented. And the quality of that evidence, I think, is very, very important. So it was a given that Aaron was sentenced on circumstantial evidence. And as you can see here, the definition of circumstantial evidence that does not on its face prove a fact in issue, but gives rise to logical inference that the facts exist. So obviously the important line is there we've highlighted, gives rise to the logical inference that a fact exists. So if certain parts of information is put forward, whether it be statement, CCTV footage, times, associations, phones, whatever, that although it is not direct evidence, and it is not incontradictable, it's known as circumstantial evidence. So that Aaron's case was definitely built on circumstantial evidence, and that was given, that was mentioned numerous times in court during the course of Aaron's trial, and indeed all the media coverage was that Aaron Brady's case was circumstantial. And then from the circumstantial evidence, inference has to be drawn. So if you see a black cow at the back of your house and you see it moving towards the gable of the house, and then when you look out the front window, there's a black cow at the front of the house, we can infer from what we've seen that that is the same cow. It's simple as that. So inference, bring this up here now, a conclusion reached on the basis of evidence and reasoning. Researchers are entrusted with the drawing of inference from data. So this is vitally, vitally important. So the researchers in Aaron's trial and Aaron's case and during the course of investigation, obviously the researchers are on Garda Síochána and the DPP. And they are entrusted. And indeed, I suppose this is where the whole issue of Aaron's false conviction and framing rests. These people were entrusted with investigating who actually murdered and took the life of Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue. So these two are the cornerstones of Aaron's trial and obviously investigation. Circumstantial evidence and the inference drawn from that evidence. So obviously the Gardaí put forward what was known as a storyboard. It was presented largely by Junior Counsel Lorcan Stain, and indeed it was technically looked after by this man here, Garrett Kenna, who, as you can see, told us during the course of Aaron's trial he was an expert in nothing. So that's very important too. This man was asked for his opinion, and it was he who presented the vast majority, probably over 99% of the evidence used against Aaron, and he's an expert in nothing. Notwithstanding that, I do believe since 2020 he may have done a course and he may have a certificate in looking at CCTV footage. I'm not 100% sure on that. So the crux of this, why we're going here, is Tony skips all the important bits of the case. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've gone through every detail of the circumstantial evidence and the inference drawn from that circumstantial evidence. We have gone through every single piece of it and shown it all to be completely false, tampered with, and the whole storyboard is completely and totally curated. So this statement by Mr. Big Stones that Tony skips all the important bits, again, broad-ranging statement that means absolutely nothing. No detail or no pointing to specific points, details, evidence, even circumstantial or if any inference. He's not even able to do that. But he does very quickly, just going to look at this, he let his son run off to America, not to face allegations. And Tony knew he has been talked about and reported in the newspapers, but blathers on with nonsense. So we've covered this in some detail, but I don't want to be accused of missing detail from Mr. Big Stone's essay here. So the reason Aaron went to America, we've shown you, is because his picture was all over the mainstream media. We have explained that the Sunday World actually released this online, this picture here online, without the pixelation. Then we had the scenario where articles like this were being written involving myself and my involvement with the GAA and our local club here and involvement in GAA in general. So that is the reason Aaron went to America. And we will say once again, just because someone goes to America is not an admittance of guilt. And very, very importantly, I think everyone will agree, and even Mr. Big Stones, Aaron going to America does not mean that you're out of the reach of the law here in the Republic of Ireland, which has been borne to be true, because obviously Aaron was deported or extradited back to Ireland. Aaron went to America, didn't hide in any way, shape or form. He was working, playing sport. He was in the Gaelic grounds most Sundays. There was football on. He used his own name on social media. We've seen pictures like this constantly, almost daily. Aaron either in diggers, pile drivers, or wherever he was working, whether it be in Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Woodlawn. We were updated with the progress of each individual site that they worked on. So this idea that you're somewhere hiding, nothing could be further from the truth. And indeed, I think you could say it would be exactly the same as sitting here in South Armagh, sitting in Belfast, London, Dublin, Kilkenny or Cork. The An Garda Síochána would have the exact same access as they would if you're sitting in Woodlawns, as was the case. So this rock that you're building your assertions on a lot of your posts, Mr. Big Stones, really hold no water and are very meek, to say the very, very least. So that covers that again. So what I do want to do is just show the public again each of the individual aspects of the case, some of the circumstantial evidence that was used, and the inference that was drawn from the same. So we go to obviously the incident itself where Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue was murdered. And we have shown here quite clearly that the evidence from the two eyewitnesses clearly demonstrate that Aaron Brady cannot be the man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue. You can see here from Mary, the credit union worker, he looked like an athletic fellow. He was tall enough. And she explained that there was a long bar, which we now assume was the shotgun, was down alongside his leg as he run. Detective Joe Ryan described the shooter with the shotgun as 6'1" to 6'1", and indeed, I will reiterate this in the numerous statements taken from Joe Ryan. The shooter was 6'2" and 6'3", but we've always stayed on the conservative side of it. So to put that into pictures and to put it into perspective, if we look at, I'll just bring this up here. This would have been Joe Ryan's perspective as he looked at the two raiders. He had obviously two men to look at. He said the raider with the shotgun was 6 foot to 6'1". The raider with the handgun was 5'6" to 5'7". So obviously we have a situation where Joe Ryan had perspective, and indeed he would have had perspective from the frame and the open door of the Avensis Garda car. So all these things give credence and landmarks and perspective to what Joe Ryan was looking at that dreadful time when his car and his colleague were being attacked. And if I bring up this picture here now, you can see quite clearly where Aaron stands. The killer is the man who actually shot Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue is actually taller than me. And you can see where that leaves in respect of Aaron, that if Aaron was the man with the shotgun, that would mean that the shooter was 5'7", which Aaron is. Then we have a situation that the man with the handgun, the second raider, would be under 5 foot, would be a dwarf, and would not even be the height of the apex of the open door of the Avensis. So that is facts. That is the details of what was put down in evidence and laid in front of the jury and the judge. Again, it's something that wasn't defended. I would say, I suppose the best way to explain it is it wasn't defended properly by Aaron's legal team at the time, because I don't think anyone was prepared for the amount of collusion, corruption and tampering with evidence during the course of the storyboard. We move then to, I think we're going to just look at, I think another very, very important part of the case was that obviously the Gardaí and the DPP and the storyboard and the circumstantial evidence put forward was that the vehicle used at the Northern robbery was a blue Passat, dark blue Passat, that was stolen in Clogherhead 48 hours before the Northern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And this simply, it's simply not true, because as you can see here in front of me, you can see the blue Passat. But the only two eyewitnesses to see the car on the night, Joe Ryan and Mary, the credit union worker, described the car as silver or grey. So you can see here that the circumstantial evidence falls miles short of being able to transfer any inference that those were the same vehicles, because they simply were not the same vehicles. It is simple because the evidence tells us, and the eyewitnesses have seen a silver and grey car, and the circumstantial evidence put forward is that it was a blue Passat. So the evidence falls short immediately. And then we look at some of the evidence that was portrayed by the Garrett Kenna. We know for a fact that the vehicle, as it left the Northern robbery scene, one of the cameras at the Lordship Credit Union picked up that it's very, very clear that the number plate light is working on the back of the vehicle leaving the scene of the Northern robbery with the raiders in it. Now, again, the circumstantial evidence put forward by Garda Síochána, and it was, as I say, detailed by Garda Kenna. He put all this up on screen and presented it to the court. So we are led to believe circumstantial evidence that the vehicle left Lordship Credit Union and drove over nearly 40 kilometres to a burn site down deep in South Armagh in a predominantly Protestant area, quite close to a highly policed police station in Newtown Hamilton. Notwithstanding that it's highly improbable and almost impossible that anyone would consider doing such a thing. But notwithstanding that, Garda Kenna presented these slides here of two vehicles, blobs of light, passing Cartamnet School, as I say, way over 30 kilometres from the scene of the Morton robbery. And the evidence from Garda Kenna and the so-called expert, Mr. Wooler, they said that a car, possibly a Passat. Now, this was after that the expert had described the vehicle as an SUV. We've gone into a lot of detail in this. So this is where we want to contradict what Mr. Big Stones is saying. We're skipping all the important bits. So a blob of light goes past Cartamnet School. The initial reaction from the expert is that this vehicle is an SUV. But the most important part, now they've turned the possible SUV back into a Passat. But it is accepted that that vehicle, the number plate light, was not working on it, or else it was placed in a different position, not usual or not normally seen on a Volkswagen Passat. So this is the nonsense we had to put up with as we went through Aaron's trial. There was lights on the back of the car, as you can see, as it left the Morton robbery scene. When it gets to the alleged burn site, the number plate light's not working. So again, we're saying these are important facets and details that have been tampered with and skimmed over by the prosecution and the DPP. And I will say again, we're not properly questioned by Aaron's defence team at the time. We looked then quite simply at some more evidence from the murder scene, the footprints. There was footprints found behind the wall where the raiders waited for over 40 minutes. They were dropped off, they were waiting for 40 minutes. Footprints and the casts were taken from these footprints. They were examined in the Forensic Lab Ireland in Phoenix Park for Garda Síochána. They were actually sent to different parts of Europe for forensic examination. And the evidence came back. There was a specific type of boot, and obviously there was some shoe sizes attained, and none of that matched Aaron Brady's. So this circumstantial evidence, and it is very strong evidence, footprints, foot casts, certain make of boot, certain sizes, and that circumstantial evidence, the inference taken from that circumstantial evidence is it has absolutely nothing to do with Aaron Brady. Absolutely nothing. So that's facts, and we're not skipping over the important bits. They are vital parts of the case. That's physical evidence from the scene of the Morton robbery. Again, we have this absolutely ludicrous situation where the woman driver of the getaway car has been made disappear because it doesn't suit the narrative. So, as you can see there from the little slide, the vehicle facing out towards the road is the credit union worker. The car pulls, as she described it, as a silver grey car, pulls over in front of her, and she is looking at this car for over 50 seconds, which is quite a long time. She says, Mary says in her statement, it's only about 2.5 pages long, she says she actually calls her a stupid bitch for parking in front of her over 50 times. So there's no ambiguity that this is a female driver. On Garda Síochána and Top Brass at incident Fort Apache Dundalk incident room, as Pat Murray described it, they were looking for a female driver. There was no issue other than a blonde Irish woman was driving a getaway vehicle. So that's the evidence, and the circumstantial evidence is that this was a female driver. The inference drawn from that is no female could be connected to Aaron Brady in respect of being able to drive away that vehicle at that time, or have been, now there were definitely inferences thrown out by Brendan Grehan. I've mentioned this before, the disgusting behaviour of Grehan, where he actually mentioned a young girl who was going through chemotherapy at that time back in 2013. And Grehan would have known that, and he just threw names out into the ether during the course of the trial in front of the jury, just to mention names and create inference that simply wasn't there. So the fact is, we have a female driver and there can be no links to Aaron Brady. That is proper evidence. Again, we have Bernadette, a credit union worker. We have our car circle there. She was attacked by a member of the gang. And while Bernadette was being debriefed and given a statement, she said she thought it was a Dublin accent. The man was shouting at her, "Give us the fucking money." And the guard who was interviewing and taking Bernadette's statement had a Dublin accent. He shouted at her, and Bernadette agreed, "Yes, it is. That's the same accent as the man who attacked me." So the circumstantial evidence we have here is that the attacker of that car in the car park at Lordship Credit Union had a Dublin accent. The inference drawn from that is that no one with a Dublin accent or no one from Dublin can be linked to Aaron Brady in any way, shape or form. Because obviously there would have been interactions between all of those who were involved in this heinous crime at Lordship Credit Union. So again, Mr. Big Stones, to say that we're skipping all the important facts, I think is totally and completely incorrect. We have the whole myriad of evidence, circumstantial evidence that proves there is no gang related to Aaron Brady. We're nearly 11 and a half years old now from the Modern robbery, and one man sits incarcerated for this terrible crime. So if there was any credence to the investigation and indeed the circumstantial evidence put forward by An Garda Síochána, other people would now be incarcerated. Now, the reason that hasn't happened, I have mentioned that a lot of this evidence got slipped over and passed by during the course of Aaron's trial. That will not and has not happened again. Now, there was another attempt during the course of James Flynn and Brendan Trainor's trial to try and push this corrupt and contaminated circumstantial evidence through again. But when questioned, it was proven in court, and these two men were acquitted of having any involvement at Lordship Credit Union the night of the Modern robbery in January 2013. So the whole circumstantial evidence put forward falls flat on its face, and the inference from that is Aaron Brady was part of no gang. James Flynn wasn't part of a gang that was involved in the Modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. That is the bottom line. And again, we have to look at facts that have been put forward, and we say evidence has been tampered with, and that evidence has been put forward that is far from safe. And I think this is very, very well highlighted. On the opening day of the trial, now this was in January, we had 3 or 4 months in court, October, November, December, and a good bit of January 2019 into 2020 for legal argument. But when the jury was sworn in and Brendan Graham gave his opening statement, he told the jury that there was a problem with phone data collection and the ability of the phone mast to geo pick up where certain phones are at certain times. Now, he attributed these problems to the Carlingford Lough, Dundalk Bay, and the mountains around the Cooley Peninsula. Brendan Graham knew when he said those words to the jury that he was telling lies, because there had been other cases, very, very high-profile cases, highlighting and pinpointing where phones were at a very specific pinpoints where phones were at very specific times. Now, the reason Brendan Graham told lies to the jury and to the court was because he knew there was manipulation of phone data in relation to Aaron, James Flynn and Brendan Traynor. And very quickly, we've done a number of videos on this. We were told that the phone silence in these graphs here, that there's 3 phone silence, Aaron's, James Flynn and Brendan Traynor were silent in around 2 or 3 hours at the time of the Modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And we were told by Brendan Graham, Lockenstein, Garrett Kenna, we were told that this was highly unusual and it was circumstantial evidence that could bring inference that the phones were silent because these 3 men were involved in the motor robbery at Lordship Credit Union. But when the actual phone data was analysed correctly, we have shown that Brendan Trainor's phone from the 1st of January to the 28th of January, I think it was silent 18 times in around the same time in the evening for that period in January. Aaron's was 14 times. I think James Flynn was 16 times. And the reason why the phones would be silent in around that time is because in the area where we live here, there is bad coverage, genuine bad coverage, not the lies that Brendan Graham told. So we can see, you tell us, Mr. Big Stones, that Tony skips over all the important bits. So you can see exactly how Brendan Graham was trying to not skip over important details, but actually tell lies about important details to create circumstantial evidence to draw inference that simply isn't there. Just one more we're going to look at, facts. And again, you're saying that we are gliding over these, Mr. Big Stones. Again, we want to say that these are all elements. There's factors that were put forward in the evidence that was used to get a false conviction against our son. And the reality is the DPP and Garda Síochána, and orchestrated by Garda Kenna and Lorcan Stain, these events had been interfered with and are simply impossible. And none more so than this, and we've looked at this numerous times, this is the entry point to the whole crime that is alleged by the DPP and Garda Síochána. On the Wednesday night, the 23rd of January 2013, the blue Passat, which we say wasn't used in the more than robbery anyway, but it just fitted the narrative. Blue Passat was stolen on the Wednesday night. And the entry point is CCTV footage at Monasterboice Inn, and a blob of light goes past the Monasterboice Inn at 2:18 in the morning, 02:18, and the next blob of light, or silhouette of a car, is at 2:24 at Termafec and Credit Union. So the allegation and the circumstantial evidence put forward by Garda Kenna, the DPP and the Irish State is that these are the facts put forward and facts that were used to gain a conviction against our son, is that the same vehicle was in the CCTV footage at that time, and that the journey was travelled in 6 minutes. Now, we have done this live on a podcast with Gemma O'Doherty. We have driven it numerous times. I have driven it with a retired rally driver. It cannot be done in 6 minutes. So the inference from the evidence put forward is, the actual proper inference is that that evidence put forward is false. It is impossible. So I hope, Mr. Big Stones, that gives you some idea that we are covering every point. Now, from the Wednesday night of this theft of the Passat, right through the whole murder scene, to the burn site, to the fictional gang, we have covered each and every aspect and every fact. Now, if you can please come back with a fact or a detail that is we've missed, we haven't covered, we haven't answered to your satisfaction, please. And I think we're going to have to park up and put in the lay-by the fact that Aaron Brady went to America. That is not in no way the reason to incarcerate someone for 40 years. And we have said quite clearly today, Aaron was not hiding in New York. He was out in public. There was no change of name. And if you're going to hide anywhere, the last place you would go in America is Woodlands or the Bronx or Brooklyn, where there is predominantly, obviously, the Irish diaspora. So again, that covers point number 4. And it's very, very vital point that the evidence is circumstantial. And from that circumstantial evidence, the inference that the DPP and Garda Síochána and the Irish authorities tried to put forward the inference. They tried to lay in front of the jury and the judge is flawed. It is tampered with. And that is why Aaron Brady's conviction is unsafe. Aaron Brady was framed, plain and simple. So we'll be looking at part 5 of Mr. Big Stones' essay to the Irish Inquiry, and hopefully we'll be able to bring you, the Irish public, some more detail on this terrible miscarriage of justice. And thank you once again for watching the video. See you next time. Thank you.